Hi, and welcome to your first homework with me. You'll be learning a brand new topic on the science of rocks. Today's homework will therefore be an introduction to rocks. What I want you to do is to take in the information that is presented to you here. You can choose to do this by only watching this presentation with my voice in the background, or by reading the full transcript, which I handed out in class, and is also available on my SlideShare. You can also watch the presentation and read the full transcript at the same time, in which case you might want to have the handout in front of you, or in case you've misplaced it, open the transcript in a new window on your browser so you have both of them up at the same time. You can do this now by opening a new window and entering the URL www.slideshare.net/mh392/7w-homework-1-transcript. So this presentation is going to be split into 3 parts. If you want to, you can do all 3 parts at once, or you can take breaks in between, whatever suits you best. Feel free to rewind and listen to parts of the presentation more than once as well, and whatever you choose to do, I want you to write a short summary paragraph at the end of each part to show your understanding. Once you've done that, you're finished. Please remember to bring your 3 summary paragraphs and any other notes or questions that you have to class on Tuesday. So now we can start looking at our topics. We'll be looking at 3 types of rock, what rocks are, how the grains making up the rocks can be different, as well as the porosity and permeability of rocks. You'll also find examples of each type of rock, so make sure to note these down too. We'll kick off this presentation with sedimentary rocks. Sedimentary rocks are formed when rocks fall to the bottom of a river. At the bottom of the river, they'll sit for millions of years. More and more rocks will fall on top, and the weight will push the rocks at the bottom until they break up into grains. The grains then stick together and form what is known as a sedimentary rock. A good example of a sedimentary rock is sandstone. You can see the layers in the rock very clearly in the picture. Igneous rock is formed in a completely different way to sedimentary rock. If we go deep into the earth, we'll find that it's very, very hot. Here, rocks will melt to form magma. When magma cools down, it solidifies to form igneous rock. An example of this type of rock is granite. Metamorphic rock is the third and last type of rock. To form metamorphic rock, we'll need heat or pressure. The temperature should be just hot enough to change the chemical properties of the rock, but not to melt it. This means that the chemicals in the rock often line up nicely in layers or bands. This is seen in the example rock called gneiss. We've come to the end of part 1, so it's now time to write a short summary. Make sure to answer the following questions in your summary. If you can't remember the answers, you can go back in the presentation or the transcript. First question, how are each of the 3 rock types formed? Second question, name an example of each type. Once you've managed to answer these questions, you can move on to the second part. As you all know, there are lots of different rocks in the world. Rocks of different colors, shapes, sizes, and hardness. These properties allow us to have specific uses for each rock. So in a general sense, what are rocks? Rocks are solid mixtures of different minerals. If we were to look at a rock under a microscope, we could find that rocks are made of smaller components called grains, which fit together. These grains are in turn made of minerals, which are made of one type of chemical compound. For example, sandstone is a rock made up of lots of grains and minerals called quartz. Quartz is a mineral made up of lots of silicon dioxide molecules. Another example is granite. Granite is a type of rock that is made up of lots of grains. The grains are made up of minerals, which are the chemical compounds that we find in rocks. In granite, we find 3 types of minerals called quartz, hornblende, and feldspar. The 3 minerals are all different colors, shapes, and sizes, as shown nicely in the diagram. The different shapes and sizes of grains give rocks their texture. Texture differs from each rock as shown in the 2 pictures. The left shows a coarse grained texture and the right shows a glassy texture. So we've come to the end of part 2. Now it's time to write another short summary. Make sure to answer the following, and if you can't remember the answers, go back in the presentation or the transcript. 1. How are rocks, grains, and minerals related? 2. What is or are the main minerals in sandstone and granite? 3. How would you describe texture? When you're done, move on to part 3. We'll start off the final part with interlocking grains. Grains that fit together in a rock with no gaps in between the grains are called interlocking grains. Interlocking grains can also be called crystals. Because the interlocking grains have no gaps in between, the rock is very hard and doesn't wear away easily. An example of a rock with interlocking grains is gneiss. In contrast, when grains are rounded, you'll find gaps between each grain. These gaps make the rocks as a whole weaker and crumplier. Rocks with rounded grains tend to wear away easily. A good example of a rock with rounded grains is chalk. The reason why we use chalk to write on the blackboard is because chalk wears away so easily. Another example of a rock with rounded grains is sandstone. Now that we know what rounded grains are, we can learn about porous rocks. Porous is a fancy word used to describe materials in rocks that have pores, which are tiny holes. Rocks with rounded grains, like sandstone in the top right, can absorb water by allowing water to get into the gaps between the grains. If these pores not only absorb water, but also allow water or air to pass through the grains, they're not only porous, but also permeable. Now take a look at the two bottom pictures. On the left is chalk, and on the right is pumice. Both are porous, but only chalk is porous and permeable. Can you tell why? Now we're at the end of the presentation, so here are your last recap questions. Again, take a few minutes to write a summary, making sure to answer the following questions. What are the differences between interlocking grains and rounded grains? What makes a permeable rock different from an impermeable rock? Give an example of a porous and permeable rock. Give an example of a porous but impermeable rock. Once you've done that, you're finished. Congrats, and don't forget to bring in your summaries to class on Tuesday. If you didn't understand something or you have any questions, make sure to write them down too, so you can ask me in class.